Yeah, Juliet's in the chat. Nice.
Yeah. Hi, Juliet. Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I kind of got misfocused there and didn't see when it first turned live. So thank you all for being here. And my guest today is Julia Murphrey of Simplicity Revealed. And Julia, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Carla. Very nice
Oh,
to be here.
yeah, it's great to meet up with you. We both of us being biofield tuners and things, it's really great. And I'm going to read just a little bit of your description here so that people can know more about you. Um, Julia lived with depression and addiction for over 5 decades. In 2017, she began doing emotional healing work, leading to her study and facilitate the arts of biofield tuning and Reiki. More recently, she added certifications in Mace Energy Method and Auricular Chromotherapy to her qualifications. Julia adheres to the premise that we are first and foremost spiritual beings, and in order to heal completely, we must acknowledge and work with our energetic aspects. For sure, absolutely. Julia loves helping others overcome their traumas, and there's biofield tuning and the Mace energy links below, and how you can contact her for her services and more information. So great. I was going to write down. I'd love to touch on that chromotherapy too at some point later. Later in the podcast, if we have time and stuff. I think that would be interesting. So, Julia, I would just like kind of start by asking you if you could tell your healing story, right? Whatever part of it or how much of it you'd like to tell, how you got into that, and then how it led you into biofield tuning and to the Mace energy.
Right. Yeah, like it said in the bio, I was in my mid 50s and I'd just been chronically depressed and self-medicating with pharmaceuticals and alcohol and just finally got sick and tired of waking up sick and tired and started coming across videos on the internet about emotional healing. And one of the videos, they interviewed Eileen Day McCusick, who's the Biofield Tuning founder or discoverer, however you want to look at that. And right away, I resonated with what she was saying. So I signed up, and that was like the end of 2016 when I started doing my emotional healing work. And before that, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't really know much about shadow work or any of that. So it was all new for me. And yeah, I just really resonated with biofield tuning and went to Vermont 3 times in 2017 to get certified. And from that point on, I just kept working on myself and getting clear of all the substances and getting out of the depression. And yeah, and here I am. And as I've gone on, of course, once you heal, you want to help other people heal because you know how it feels, especially for depression. So yeah, I've just been on that path as I got better and better. I just wanted to help more and more people. And so, in 2021, I guess I started my YouTube channel. So that just gave me a connection with a lot of people. I think the way we have media now and the internet, and we can all connect worldwide is just amazing. And I'm just so grateful for that opportunity. And so, yeah, as time went on, I did the biofield tuning, and then recently, last year, I discovered Mace Energy Method, and again, it just really resonated, and it's amazing because instead of having to do this shadow work, this emotional healing work for years and years and years, you could do it really quick. So, of course, that sounds real awesome. So then I
Hmm.
investigated that and became a Mace Energy Method practitioner. And then just recently, like last month, I learned something new because this building I go to all the time here where I live. I went in and all of a sudden I had a migraine, and what I realized is I was being zapped by EMFs. After
Hmm.
some uh, retrospection on what had happened, And then right at that same time, a couple of friends of mine were looking into remedies about how to, heal from that EMF hypersensitivity. And they told me about the auricular chromotherapy, which is kind of similar to Mace Energy Method, and we can talk more about that later. So again, I said, oh, that's another thing I could use in my tool belt. So, and it's
Yeah.
just, it's that time in our history of humanity where we need all these healing modalities that are focused on the energetic aspect. And that's why, they're being tapped into in the ether. I don't think anything is new under the sun. And I really feel like these modalities are being discovered rather than, just created, right now on the spot. And that's how John Mace looked at Mace Energy Method too. He felt like he discovered it rather than inventing it.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think Eileen feels the same way about biofield tuning.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. The um the EMFs is really becoming more and more problematic. I think, like, I have a lot of very sensitivities to it, and we hardwired the house, and I use obsidian crystals, wherever it might help. And I've got copper dowsing rings on all the electric panels and everything. And it's like, but I've recently started having like shorter dizzy spells. And it's like, I have no reason to feel why I might be doing that, except for perhaps EMF increases or something.
Right. And like you said, they're increasing all the time and it's invisible.
Hmm.
So, and that kind of goes in with what we do in our energy work because I know you do stuff with biofield tuning and the ancestral river, which is very interesting. But people always, the hardcore materialist, they always want this solid proof, but there's this effect with these EMFs that nobody sees, but there's definitely the effects there, and that's how it works in the whole energy universe. There's all kinds of effects going on with us, whether they're natural or man-made. So, it's nice that people are finally paying attention to that aspect more and more. I really feel like we're on the cusp of a paradigm shift,
Hmm.
in
Oh,
that respect.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree. More and more people becoming aware of being energy beings and spirit beings, because spirit and energy are pretty much interchangeable, right? And yeah, it's great. There is, with that, so many people increasing that mindset, and um, it just really raises the opportunities and um, possibilities, right? Of our, not just our personal growth, but voltage for the universe, right? Yeah, for us. So I was wondering if you could. I I don't know hardly anything about Mace Energy, except what I've read a few paragraphs on the site, and I've listened to you speak on your videos about it. So if you could give people an overview of it, I would really appreciate it.
Right, yeah. John Mace was one of these guys. He died in his 90s a few years ago. He just always wanted to help other people, and he would learn all these modalities, and he would see that they helped, but nothing ever seemed to last. And then he was discussing some new methods that he'd learned with his longtime friend John Avery, who's still alive and works with Mace Energy Method consulting practitioners, and he's 94 now.
Wow.
So they were talking, and they were kind of running the process, and John Mace had his eyes closed, and all of a sudden he saw this image, and so that kind of prompted what is now the Mace Energy Method. And what John Mace, his model says is that we're not only body, mind, and spirit, we're body, mind, spirit, and identities. And we have to have these identities to do things for us because we, the energy being, we can't drive cars or even really navigate these avatars that we have while we're here in this realm. So we have to have these identities that allow us to do that. And so, of course, we create all these positive identities that allow us to operate in this material realm. But then when we're hit with trauma, because of our instinctual reactions, we create negative identities. And these negative identities, they just become the bane of our lives. They keep popping up and they keep leading to more and more upset. And it's kind of this phenomenal thing where you got the upset, then you got the negative identity, then it leads to more upsets, and then that leads to more negative identities, and it just goes and goes and goes. So what he's what he discovered and the Mace model says is that our mind is not what people tell us it is. Our mind only has one job, and that is to create a mental image of whatever we have our attention on. And John Mace would always give the example. I want you to say to yourself, don't think of an elephant, don't think of an elephant. And then what are you looking at? An elephant, because your mind isn't thinking. Your mind is just going to make a mental image of whatever you put your attention on. And so that's how Mace energy works. You have someone come in and they think of an upsetting event, and the Mace Energy Method practitioner doesn't need to know any details about what happened because we don't bring whatever happened into the future with us. We only bring how it makes us feel. So we have a very short period of time where the person experiencing the Mace Energy Method session, feels that, thinks about that upset, goes to the very worst moment of that upset, and then gets a mental image by just really feeling the negative feelings that they had during that upset. And then once that image appears, it's made the intangible tangible. And it's also separate from the person having the Mace Energy Method experience. So now the image is separate from them so they can observe what it is. And the Mace Energy Method process, for whatever reason, these images just on their own, as the client's watching them with their eyes closed, will expand, and then they'll eventually shrink and disappear. And once they disappear, once the image is gone, the negative identity it represented is gone. And so then the person just usually feels good right away after just that simple process. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I probably left out some details, but does that make sense to you?
Um, well, yes, and no, probably. Um, I don't know. It's just so I guess I'm hung up on the word identity. So like it's not um, it's not like a separate entity, or it's just another word for old stories, or something like that.
Well, like alter egos would be the best comparison.
Okay. Or like so instead of like a fragmented part of ourselves, this is a part of ourselves that is still part of us.
Right. Just like we have all these positive identities that allow us to do daily life, we create these negative ones that we created during trauma. Because when you have trauma, you have a negative feeling, so you resist it. And then what you resist persists. And
Hmm.
so whenever you're setting up that negative energy ridge, you get down on yourself when you have that negative feeling. So then you make a negative decision about yourself. And usually early traumas, we make these negative decisions about ourselves, which become
Hmm.
like the linchpin of all our negative identities after that. Like the common one is I'm not good enough. And once
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
once that judgment's there in our life, so some people might call identities judgments, right? Because it's a judgment, I'm not good enough, right? And negative
Okay.
feelings are also another example of negative identities.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Janet joined us there. Hi, Janet. And so I was wondering then. Um, so if we do, I'm kind of thinking of then these identities as kind of like, say, I have had a lot of sinus allergies in the past, right? And so you get allergic to one thing, and then you're suddenly allergic to anything else you experience during that time. Your body then perceives that that's part of the allergy, and you become allergic to that, and then it just kind of explodes.
Right. Well, what happens with negative identities is you create those early ones early in life, like I'm not good enough. And so every time something negative happens that makes you feel that sad feeling that went with that decision, I'm not good enough. Well, it just reinforces that. And then other negative identities will pop up, like, oh,
Mm,
I'm so stupid and I don't never do anything right and things like that. So it just kind
okay.
of builds and it's like, just gets momentum and just keeps building and building and building. And once you get rid of that core identity, that what we call the ruin, which is the bane of your life, which is often the one I'm not good enough, then that
Mm,
eliminates a lot of other negative identities that got built around that as time went on. So
okay.
yeah, so you can end
Okay.
up getting relief from a whole lot of judgments when you get to that core judgment that was kind of the catalyst to build all the other judgments after that.
Okay. Okay. I'm kind of getting at understanding a little bit more now. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Sue Morter. She wrote the Energy Code. She's a chiropractor that does energy healing things. And she has a method that you can go through using um, it's yoga positioning, but you can and muscle testing and find out what chakra it's at, what word or phrase you have that blocked for, as well as the emotion. It was it, right? And so I'm getting it. So these, because I did a lot of my healing through her in the first couple years of my healing journey. And so it's those words. These identities are associated then with these words or feelings, the emotions. Okay, that makes sense to
Exactly.
me now.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that
Right.
makes
And
sense.
there are several modalities that kind of address this just from different angles, and that's auricular chromotherapy too. And that was why I found it really interesting because it's the same kind of situation where you think of an upsetting event and you close your eyes and you get a mental image that represents it. And then they just use certain acupuncture points on your ears and shine light on it, particular yellow for that on your earlobe. They figure out which spot to do. And usually that makes the image change into something positive or go away, and it makes the feeling dissipate as well. So it's kind of a similar situation. And fortunately, I had a friend here, and we were doing the auricular chromotherapy for an upsetting event, and it worked on one. And so we went to another event, and the auricular chromotherapy didn't change anything for him with the image and the feeling. So then I went ahead and ran the Mace process where you just create the image, and then that was effective. So it's kind of nice to have all these different modalities, and I also do biofield tuning in combination with Mace Energy Method. When you hit the stuck energy spot, if the person gets an image, if they think of something
Hmm.
upsetting and get the image, then we can run the Mace
Hmm.
process rather than using the crystal in the field or the quartz on the body.
Right,
And
right.
that's been
Uh-huh.
real effective too. So yeah, it's pretty
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, very good. So with the MACE process, you're just sitting or lying down, right? Could you run us through like a simple session, or
Mhm.
tell us how
Yeah,
that works?
it's usually over Zoom, and you're just talking. The person's usually sitting up. It's kind of better to sit up rather than lie down because you do need some alertness to it. And yeah, we just kind of go over the basics and then have the person close their eyes whenever we're doing any of the processes. And the first thing we do is we address an upset that came up during the session because that's really where we work with the spiritual energy aspect. But because whatever upset comes up during the process while we're doing it, that's the one that's going to have the two most negative elements in their life. And so
Mm,
We get them to go to that worst moment and tell us how they feel and tell us what negative decision they made about themselves. And then once we
mm,
do those two things, then we get them to close their eyes again, and we get them to, so say the decision is I'm not good enough. So we tell them, so I want you to think what I'm not good enough means to you, and you change as a person when you think that, right? So we really get them to feel into that whole notion of I'm not good enough until they see an image. And then once they see an image, they just observe it. And that's sometimes where people have difficulty doing the process because they want to control the image, but
mm,
you don't need to control it. You just observe the image because it's just representing that negative identity, and it's exhibiting that it's separate from you because you're the observer of it. So it can't be you because you're the one observing it. And so you just watch the image, and the image on its own will expand and then contract and disappear. And once the image
mm,
disappears, once the image is gone, then the negative identity it represents is gone. And
mm.
usually the person feels better right away, immediately after that process.
Yeah.
And then you do the same thing with the negative feeling that they had, say it was being sad, and you run that process with that. And then we go into relationships, and we do a lot of processes with relationships, and then we do a life scan, and then we let them address anything they might feel guilty about. And then we can also address health issues and phobias and addictions, compulsive behavior. So it's really a powerful process that can cover the whole realm of
Mm.
situations that humans have to deal with that aren't fun.
Right. So, like, how how long would be a session, or can you do multiple of these, if you call them releases or restorations, um, in a row, or is that overwhelming for a person and it's just like it takes long enough that you just do one at a time, or how does that work?
Yeah, we end up eliminating a lot of negative identities within usually about a 2-hour process, give or take. Some people take less time, some people take more time for the initial or foundation session, and then a week later we meet, and we just do a follow up. We check everything we did last time, see if anything got triggered over the week, and
Hmm.
address all that. And yeah, so it's pretty intense. The initial session, which is usually, like I said, about 2 hours. So yeah, we take care of that ruin, then we go into relationship repair, and then we cover other aspects. There might be some particular issues that the person has that we can handle that too. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
very thorough. And for most people, just that one session is sufficient, maybe, more than the one follow-up, because you never really have a whole another 2-hour session typically. But yeah, and then usually the one session is enough for most people, or maybe a couple extra follow-ups other than just the one a week later.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. So, um so, like, if you're talking about the, say, like the ruin of, not being good enough. So, um, once it's released or removed or whatever, disappears in during the session, that person won't feel that again.
Exactly. Like that's one of the things we ask during the session. I want you to tell me I'm not good enough and really mean it. And the person can't do it.
Huh.
So, and then the thing is, once you know about it, you won't create it again because, the law of the universe is for us to survive, just like we wouldn't put our hand in a pot of hot boiling water. Well, we
Hmm.
would never create a negative identity or a negative feeling knowingly. So once we know about it, we'll never create it again. So it's gone, it's history. So
Huh.
yeah, it's very final.
So, like, compare this to biofield work. Say, like, with the not good enough, it's like you can um, remove the not good enough at many different layers in your life, right? Many different times, or really in different parts of the biofield, right? As they applied in that's the core emotion, but other emotions were felt, is what it seems to me. And so you have these pockets that all relate to the first one is, and so like um, every session releases just the pockets of stuck energy are that the fork encounters or that are ready to release. So, but it I don't think it releases like everything everywhere in your biofield, right? Having to do with not enough. That's what it seems to me. Uh,
Right.
Whereas Mace, it would release everything pertaining to that.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
That's that's what's amazing about it is it's so thorough. And anyone who's had a session can see how thorough it is. Once they go through it, they go, yeah, that was a lot. Covers a lot. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really
Hmm.
refined. That John Mace tapped into it. I think it was 1996, in Australia it's been going pretty strong, but it's just now getting out to the world thanks to Jerry Marzinski's discovering it and sharing it. How well it works. So yeah, and like I said earlier, it's just this time in humanity when these energetic healing modalities are coming to us. So whichever
Hmm.
one we resonate with,
Hmm. Right.
there there's so many of them, and I find new ones all the time. I just saw one the other day that had works with color, water, and sound. I'm
Oh,
like, oh
that would
no,
be
not
good.
another one,
Huh.
right?
Or like I did a angel healing session a few weeks ago and found it to be incredibly powerful. And it was kind of like you had said, it was like, the practitioner, it was like I gave him a list of probably 10 things and he cleared all those and asked for more. And it was like, I, uh, I was feeling shifts for a week afterwards. Right. It was just very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, an amazing time for all this, and yeah, I'm really thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's exciting and how they can all work together, like you say, because there's probably those um, identities that we're not even quite aware of. Whereas if you combine it with biofield work and it locates some of that
Mhm.
and can say like if that happens, so does the person then have to remember what or have to know what that is in order for the mace
Nope,
to clear? No.
nope.
Okay.
It's just a matter of having the feeling. If you have a
Hmm.
negative feeling that can handle, you don't even need to really know the decision necessarily. So yeah. And yeah,
Wow.
biofield tuning is really good at uncovering those hidden negative identities that people just don't feel quite right, but they can't pinpoint what it is. And so start going
Yeah.
through the biofield and you're like, oh, something here at age 6 and bing, all of a sudden, even if they don't remember all the details, it's enough to get that feeling and that image. And then,
Right. That's kind of what happened to me. It was like I was receiving a biofield session, and the practitioner says, You're 3 years old, and I'm feeling you're having lots and lots of terror." And I said, "Really? 3 years old? I don't remember anything about I that I wouldn't, and I'm not feeling anything now. Usually, I feel whatever pocket it is. I'm having that emotion, right, or a picture about it, or whatever." And it was like, Um, nope, I didn't feel anything. But then later work in hypnosis and other things to try to figure out what it was. Right, meditation, asking source, asking God, energy, to give me a vision. Tell me what happened. And bits and pieces came together, and then now I know the whole story. There was, but interesting. Yeah. Well, very very cool. Um, Hmm, I'm thinking. S- So I was wondering then, can this do it? The mace also clear like the negative energy attachments and energies that in biofield work we find those in our fields attached at times and everything. Does Mace work with those two, or is it more um, just the identities that happen because of just our life, not with the separate attachments or energies?
Right. Yeah, Jerry Marzinski, his whole thing was he says that people that have schizophrenic symptoms, that those aren't hallucinations, that they're entities, right?
Right.
And Mace
Yes.
Energy Method has actually helped some of his more, clients that have more mild symptoms. He says if they're too far gone, they can't focus enough for the Mace Energy Method process to work. But so yeah, that in my opinion, I think that all these healing modalities, they help you optimize your frequency. And once
Hmm.
you have an
Hmm.
optimal frequency, these negative entities, these negative attachments, whatever you want to call them, they can't hang out with you, and they can't get into you. They can't get on you because it's a frequency thing, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's why
Hmm.
certain substances will open portals. And of course, if you're very fearful, I had issues with I felt like were entities when I was heavy into drugs and alcohol. And I definitely think that was related because of the frequency thing, how my vibration was. So I think that's how Mace Energy Method helps these schizophrenics too. If it is indeed entities that are giving them these telling them these things in their head, because it helps optimize their frequency and helps them get rid of those negative judgments they've been holding, and so they
Hmm.
feel better about themselves. And once it just all leads to having better vibration.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Hey, we have some questions in the chat for you, Juliet. One is, what is your greatest challenge in your work?
Um, I don't really see it as too challenging. Every person you work with is a little different, but yeah, it's
Okay.
fun.
Yeah.
It's a discovery. It's a learning experience. So yeah, I don't really see anything too challenging.
Yeah, everything's a learning experience, isn't it? For sure. The
And I guess the challenge would be with some people that don't quite get the results they want as quick as they want.
mm,
It's kind of but you just hold space and you keep that intention. I really feel like intention is the number one component with anything. If you have the intention you want to heal, it will manifest.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And um, I guess too, you can see it as just part of our soul contract, part of this life experience that we agreed to, not just what we experience, but perhaps the path or the process that we're going to take to work through it and learn, right? Um,
Right.
so one question is, can you expand on relationship repair?
Yeah, well, we go through and we ask some very specific targeted questions about relationships that have affected you in the past negatively, and we address relationships with people, relationships with organizations, relationships with anything. And if there was any kind of negative relationship, say with an angry person or a narcissist, then we just go through that whole process that I talked about earlier, where you just really drop into how you feel when you're around that type of person till you get an image, and then we just create it. And so it allows you to respond instead of react, just automatically react to people. And it gives you the whole process of Mace Energy Method just helps you get this extra aspect of self-awareness, and so you see things from the bigger picture. And I don't know, you kind of lose that charge that you had with these people you've had that brought up negative feelings, because you had to deal with them. And yeah, you have more empathy for them, and you're just less reactive to them. And it's just through the process, the way the questions are put out, and just handling the negative identity and just creating it.
Interesting. Um, does does that work with relationships then, or Mace Energy in general, then apply to, say, past lives or the ancestral things we carry in us too? Or does it need to be something that we directly experienced?
I think it can address that too, and I believe there's some advanced training you can get where it kind of goes into that, but I haven't really looked into that too much yet. But
Hmm.
yeah, because of course that's going to come up now too, right? As you
Hmm.
probably know. So, and it's kind of the chicken and the egg thing. It doesn't matter what came first. You can't have one without the other. So yeah, I mean, you could be having upsets that came with you into this life because it doesn't really matter when the upset happened. It's just if you still have that feeling, you have that negative energy ridge there, then
Hmm.
something that needs to be just created.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that word, discreate.
Right.
Yeah. The another
Delete,
question. The what? Sorry.
deleting. Yeah,
Deleting.
deleting.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I like to use the word restoration. Restoring our original divine flow. Right. Um, so after sessions, this is a question from the chat. After sessions with your clients, do you experience any shifts in your own life?
Yeah, it's usually really a good experience. You get that residual, just like with biofield tuning, right?
Hmm.
Every time you give a tuning, you feel the good effects of it too. So yeah, I think
Right.
that's with all energy work, right? Because it's kind of a give and take. It's like magnetism; it just feeds on itself.
Yeah,
So
your
it's good.
energies are overlapping, with the other person. I mean,
Hmm.
physiologically and by intention too, of course.
Hmm.
So,
Right.
yeah, beautiful. And can you talk about tuning children? Is a question. Tuning
Um,
or and as well as Mace. Have you worked Mace with children also then? However you want to address those questions.
I haven't personally done either. The youngest person I tuned was 17. You might have tuned some younger than that,
I've
but
tuned babies, yeah. Um,
cool. Yeah, I've done animals,
mhm.
but Mace Energy Method, yeah, you can use it with children, which is great because if they're having nightmares or they're just upset or something, they have a bully at school or whatever it is, you can just run that process. Of course, it's not a 2-hour situation with them. It depends on their age, and if they're really young, of course, the parent needs to be there and always get the parental consent. But yeah, John Avery, came on that because he was working with some teachers that worked at the Steiner schools, and they really loved the process on them. And they had a problem child and said, "Hey, can you try it on our student?" And of course, it worked great. He ended up going from being the worst behaved kid to the best behaved kid. And
Mm,
so, yeah,
wow.
Mace Energy Method is very effective for children. And I've
Now,
had friends that have had the session and just had children that they cared for or whatever, and the kid was upset, and so they would run the process with them and got benefits from it. So
oh,
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love tuning babies. It's like you just entered the field and it's so pure and sweet and oh,
Right.
it's yeah, there's not quite another feeling like it. That pureness that we lose as we grow because our biofield then becomes all patterned with all these identities, right? Or all these stuck energies around.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
beautiful. So, like you said, do you find it like in biofield work, in general, the younger the child, the shorter the session then? Or and the same way with elderly, like in biofield tuning, it's kind of thought, or I've heard at times saying that like working with the elderly, it could be too much for them physically, to deal with detox symptoms or these shifts and changes all at once, and so work is slower. Is that the case with Mace?
Um, I think it's With children, it's definitely just a shorter process, and yeah, probably the younger they are, it's all about the attention span, and it's usually just one or two things that they're having issues with that you need to address.
Hmm.
But yeah, with biofield tuning, yeah, I found the same thing as you.
Hmm. Okay. The and oh, I had something on the tip of my tongue there. Now I've lost it. So I go look at my notes here. Um, s- so your children's sessions, do you think with the mace, whereas is it shorter just because they have fewer things to clear, in their life, or do you purposely make it shorter, um, for their being able to emotionally uh, or physically be part of the session type of thing?
Right, yeah, they usually have fewer issues, and the process we do for adults, it's kind of hard for them to follow mentally, right? They might not get
Hmm.
all the concepts, and yeah, they wouldn't be able
Hmm.
to really understand what the questions that we ask in the sessions. Most children, under the age of 9 or 10 wouldn't be able to really comprehend what you were asking them. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to really like cater it to them. And
You got to learn to talk like a kid again. Or no,
right,
talk like a mom maybe or something. Understand the kid. Yeah, yeah,
right, just
yes,
like in teaching, yeah,
yeah.
every time.
Right. You got to
And
know how
even
to
at their
approach
level,
it.
even at their level of comprehension. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Very good. Very good. Um, um, Another question from chat here. What are the most common themes or body centers that you work with on MACE? Or she didn't specify Mace or Biofield. For example, lately she's been mostly working on people's feet. Um, I find, I if you don't mind, I've just it brings up a this is a good question. I've found it in mine, and I think it works in different ways. I find that under certain star transits, right, under certain zodiac signs, I'm working on similar things. Like for a while, I'm working in the heart with everybody, and then the next, and you go into everyone open minded, right, with the pendulum, or and just guided by spirit where you're going to work, and it's like everybody's working on the heart, or you know whatever it is. And the other thing that I found that I'm kind of ex- experimenting with a little bit as far as timing is, it seems to me sometimes I regularly I tune a mother and a child, and it's like if I tune the child separately, I um, would get whatever I would get. But a lot of times, if I tune the child after I tune the mother, like within a day, right? Or just a few hours to a day after I tune the mother, I end up working predominantly on the same things I work on the mother. And so it seems to me like if it's after the mother, things have already been cleared perhaps, or you're integrating those changes from the mother down to the next generation. Um, Whereas if you're working just in the child itself, then you get something particular for her there. Have you found that? or or however you want to answer the questions with um, what common themes and where you most usually work.
Right, I've never had that opportunity like you did, but that's very interesting. And plus, there's that whole telepathic connection that a
Hmm.
mother and child have, and of course, we all have it with each other. We just don't really pay attention. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I think I noticed mostly with biofield tuning that it's usually around majority heart, heart. Yeah,
It's a lot of hard work. It really is. I think so much. I think probably because a lot of all those identities that we have, right, are turn into different aspects of lack of self-love, right? So that way you're not
Mhm.
giving yourself love or receiving it from yourself.
Right. Right. And you
That's
have
my
that.
perspective on it.
Yeah, I think so. And you have that sadness.
Yeah, I have the sadness. And I guess one thing that now is it, I'd like to compare this, if you would, biofield tuning with Mace, in that, um, say, like talking about the heart is a real good example. I had done multiple sessions on, um, over the course of a couple years or whatever for one person, and finally, a heart shield, right, that you find at the heart rose. I hadn't found it before, but it was obviously there to remove. Whereas another client, I removed her heart shield, appeared within um, 5 sessions or something like that, right? And it was ready. I've removed another heart shield like on the first session. So with Mace, I mean, I see it with biofield tuning as whenever it is that person's mind and energy like is ready to release it, right? Whenever you, that inner child feels safe enough to release it. So how does that? Do you notice that with Mace that uh, I don't know that it might? I don't know how to. Do you know what I'm asking? I'm
Right.
not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. With Mace, after we run the ruin, we usually ask the client to let us know if they're having any unpleasant feelings and where they're feeling it on their body. And so, oftentimes, again, it's around that heart area, and it's usually up, unless they might have some kind of injury or just pain. And yeah, and then we just let them drop into that feeling and just create that identity, and it seems to free up that energy. So
Nice. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Here's another question related to themes you might find. Um, sh- for example, she said in the ancestral field, finding slavery as a theme through the timelines of different ones. Um,
that's your area of expertise there.
yeah, I haven't that I know of. I don't remember a time in healing the common type of slavery you might think of. In the United States, what we're told the Civil War was fought over, right? As black slaves or African American slaves. I don't remember finding that in the field. However, I have definitely found what I would term spiritual slavery, um, based on there's I divide things into two mindsets, right? Into the mindset of source or God, the mindset of the pureness of the universe, which would be abundance, freedom, and love, joy, gratitude, right? The versus the mindset of man, or the mindset of lack, hierarchy, fear, right? And so what I have seen is that in the what I would call the oneness or heaven, the next realm that people would go to, not the realm around us. I find that when people die, um, very few of them go to the next realm and go straight to the oneness. Most of them stay around here in what I call the realm of nature, right? Until they're in their journey, they've gotten far enough so they go to heaven or the oneness. But what I have feel when I'm working in it, the heaven or the oneness, there is no hierarchy, because that's not the mindset. Everyone is created equal, right? Everyone, you have different skills and abilities and roles that were played in your lives and things, but everyone is love, right? Everyone has that mindset of love, whereas a lot of the ones that die that don't go to heaven or the oneness that stay in the mind still have their mindset that they had when they were on earth, which would have all those identities you're talking about and stuff. But what I see in the in this realm around us, where the spirit world, right, you'd use that for lack of a better term, or this realm of nature, there are levels of hierarchy that um, people are in. Like some try to rule over others, and others, just like in life, your tendency is powerlessness and letting people rule over you, right? They're both two sides of the coin. And so there are definitely those levels that could in some ways are so strong that are definitely what I would call slavery. There's also just the slavery that I encounter as well as being enslaved to those old stories. How I perceive it, I don't know, other people probably perceive this differently, but what I perceive is that we have these soul contracts, right? I have experienced those, or many people talk about them, whereas we're in the oneness before we come to earth, that we agree what we're going to experience here on earth, right? And so what I see is that as we grow, we develop this band of energy around us that keeps us enslaved. It's like it's the mind making sure, because your spirit agreed, to you consciously agreed, your mind agreed, but your spirit agreed too to come experience these things. So I see it as um, your mind making sure you keep that contract. And that's how that slavery yoke develops around us, is what it feels like to me. And of course, when the person is ready, um, or the universe is ready for it to happen, however that works in each situation, then it can be removed, right? And perhaps in the Mace energy, it's the ruin that you talk about, the central one, that acts as the basis of that slavery yoke. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. Let's see. There's another question. How many sessions are you able to give in one day as a practitioner?
Um, two's pretty good, because that's 4 hours.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's pretty good. How about biofield sessions then? How many of those, if you were not doing MACE but only the biofield, how many of those can you do in a day, or
oh,
that you prefer to do in a day? Right,
right, probably 4.
that's max. Yeah,
4 or so. Mhm.
I I like to. Um, I I guess well, we all differ because of our personalities and everything too. But also, I'm like you, Julia. I started my healing journey later in life, right? And so, like, I'm in my mid 60s, and um, it's like, I can't do 4 a day. So, um, two's good, and I'm happy with that, right? One is even great. It gives me lots of times to do whatever else I want to do, since at this point in my life. But
Yeah, yeah,
I
I'm the
think it
same way,
varies.
really. I prefer 1. I could do 4, but yeah, I prefer 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's easier. It makes life easier. Definitely. Now, I know, I've heard Eileen speak, or maybe I read in her books or something, where she used to do many a day, right? 10 a day, or 8 a day, or whatever it was. And it's like,
Mhm.
I can't imagine staying
Right,
balanced energetically or emotionally
mhm,
during that time. But many people can, I'm sure. Especially a young person. If you're doing
mhm.
this in your 20s, you'd be able to, sure. Um,
Right, yeah.
but I'm not even interested, even if I could, doing that many a day. Yeah.
Exactly. We're accustomed to our life of leisure and having all this leisure time, so we don't want too
Yeah.
much.
Absolutely. Make life easy, right?
Mhm.
And here's another question. Um, she wanted to clarify something. In the mother's field, she found a kind of barbaric European enslavement. And in the daughter's field, something that felt like Babylonian captivity. Well, it would be my thought right off that it could be a number of things, right? You could have a feeling that they experienced that made them feel like, and you're feeling like that because of how you have heard or perceived as that being. No, so like you have it in your mind, so spirit brings it to you as that, so you can understand what it is that's trying to clear. However, it very well could be from a past life or ancestral field too, that was contained from. That's my thought. What do you think, Julia?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Like I said, that's more your area of expertise, so
But I think, well, everybody, what I love about all the energy work, and of course, I haven't experienced a Mace session yet, and but what I love about biofield tuning, and I'm sure many, many other modalities are the same way, is that we can only see life and we can only see what's happening in the biofield according to our own perceptions, our own identities, right? That have done, um, been built within us, right? And so, but what I totally love is that spirit takes whatever all I bring to the table, or whatever you bring to the table, whatever each of us bring to the table, and they use that for the highest good of whatever needs to clear. And it's just lovely. It shows the lack of the hierarchy, of that
right.
lack of that mindset. It shows that abundance and freedom mindset of that I am presence, that we all are meant to live in.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah. And another question here, and I noticed, when she's, because this is another tuner, right? A biofield tuner, and I believe, could you tell us in the chat, like, approximate, I don't know, length of time you've been in the field, just so we get an idea of that might help in some answer we might give you, how long you've been doing tuning. She says, I notice when I am giving biofield sessions, sometimes I get overwhelmed by emotions. What is your experience in that matter? Oh, I do at times, definitely. Lots, often I have tears running down my face. I have, oh, sometimes it's just so sad, or it was, whatever the emotion might be. I felt something in one session last week or whatever, and it was like that intenseness that I felt. And again, it was at the heart chakra, and it was a child, and it was so intense. I had never felt that intenseness and quite that vibration before. Yeah, I mean, it was a slightly different aspect of a vibration, or slightly different emotion than I had felt, and it was like I was just totally, it's kind of like my mind went blank just for a moment because it was so big, and then it was like I just call on spirit. I said, to take my mind to where I can be to do this, right? To process everything and keep working to process this for the my client. And so right away, it's like I get this picture of I'm standing under a waterfall, and this water is just pouring all over me, and it's like it drains all that emotion from my mind and from my heart, and I keep tuning, right? And it can clear. So um that's one of the most deepest ones. But have you had experiences with the feeling overwhelmed at times, Julia?
Um, usually I'll set the intention for that not to happen. before tuning and just the whole
Mhm.
hollow bone meditation thing, so you
Right.
don't
Mhm.
absorb any of the negative energy. So I haven't had it too much, and if I do, once you clear it in the field, it usually releases.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And think I think it depends on the person, right? Like I don't really call myself empathic, I guess, feeling a lot of other people's emotions, but I am very, very sensitive to energy, to emotions of different kinds. And so um, I think I might have more trouble just in general than someone that as a whole wasn't easily feeling the high energy or high emotions all the time. Don't you think so?
Yeah, definitely.
And but it's helped me to sometimes before a session to hold it in, ask spirit to say, where shall I put my mind today during the session, um, like as I work, so that it relieves those, right? And sometimes I'll get this picture of walking through a field of flowers, or walking barefoot through a forest, or and it's just a mental picture that I can hang on to, with a small portion of my mind, right? As I work in spirit, it just helps keep that hollow bone feel that
Mhm.
calmness of throughout, groundedness.
Mhm. That neutrality.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's a good word for it. Well, well, um, thank you very much, Agnieszka. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing quite right. I know you're. Um, thank you. I appreciate that. And she says she started in April. So very good. Yeah, you're experiencing lots and lots of new things, and Um, that's what all of us do when we start, right? Julia, could you tell us about, because would have started with, I started biofield work at the end of 2019, so you would have started a few years before me. And could you tell us some of your early things you might remember in your learning process?
Well, I remember when I was having the training and I was having a biofield tuning session, and they hit a certain age, and Eileen was asking questions about it, and I just had a huge emotional release and started crying. And then, of course, the whole room started crying because it's all very empathetic people.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a real eye opener. Of course, it happened during the training. And then right after the training, I don't remember which training it was, but I remember spending time with a friend who had EDS, which is a very painful joint condition. And we went on a river trip, riding the river. I had my kayak. And then after that river trip, I like absorbed all her symptoms. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
could barely get around for, a few days. So I really got a taste of how powerful energies can be, and how you really have to, again, make sure you're at that optimal frequency so other people's and just other negative energies out in the ether don't affect you.
Hmm. I know in receiving multiple sessions through the years, there's been numerous times where negative entities, um, of and energies of different kinds have been cleared from me. It's like, one time the practitioner, it was on Zoom, of course, and she didn't see it, but her husband in a different room of the house saw this red thing run out of the house, right, run across the yard, and that came out of me, right, and other times it's been a little different, but it's been definitely attachments, right, of some kind, whether they were just um, you know, negative energies of some kind attached, or whether it was um, I don't know. How do you explain things that you really can't see and that you don't know how they get there necessarily, right? Sometimes
Right.
there's just not a big explanation, and I don't know if there's, except for our own understanding, if there's a whole lot of value in trying to um, know exactly what it is we're clearing, just to clear. But I know the negative energies are really real. Like I have a positive ley line vortex in my house, and that's what I use to transition ancestors into the next realm, into the oneness. Um, but one time I had gotten caught, I guess. I had found another positive ley line vortex out in the woods, a woody area, and I felt another one, so I went there, and but then I got close and couldn't find it. It was just different, and then the next morning I woke up and I was, I mean, I was yucky inside, and so I had a session, had planned the next day anyway, and so it was like there was there was all this great negative energy. I had absorbed it from being in a negative vortex instead of a positive vortex, because the negative vortexes are where a lot of ancestors or energies that, it's just like the positive vortex is higher voltage, and so the negatives don't want to come. And so, whereas the negative vortexes are negative energy, and that's where the people with still the lower vibrations go. So, but anyway, so could you talk a little bit about ways you might raise your voltage, Julia?
Right. I think genuine gratitude is huge. You know, just and having just honest self awareness and just being mindful. Of what you take in. You have to, what kind of media you consume and everything. Everything is energy, bottom line, and again, intention is so powerful. Just to intend to have that optimal frequency and follow your intuition on the best ways to do that. But I really feel like gratitude, and of course, when you're really depressed, and I had so many years of depression, I realized that you're very focused in on yourself. You're really self-centered. So
Hmm.
if you start
Hmm.
helping others, doing things for other people, being grateful, um, those are probably the biggest things that can optimize your frequency, in my opinion.
Yeah, it reminded me of, I was married to a drug addict and alcoholic for quite a while, and it was, um, so after we had, at different times, I was involved with Al-Anon then, and one of the beautiful sayings I learned from AA and Al-Anon was, put something beside your problem at your center, which is just what you were saying, right? But in a different phrase, put your mind on something else. Focus on something good. Yeah, on being present. That's a big thing. Just being present. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and focusing on the good, and one of my friends, Joanna, she was like, whenever she would get worried, she would take that and turn it to excitement, because it's basically the same vibration, it's just different poles of it. And so, yeah, there's just little tricks that we can do, things like that, because why worry about things? How's that going to help? Whatever you put your attention on, that's what your intention is, and that's likely what will manifest. It's a big feedback loop, and it all ties back into your vibration and your frequency. So, yeah,
Hmm.
to have that optimistic outlook, to focus on the good and how you want things to be, rather than worry about how bad they can be. That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I'm doing, learning now, just like you've been learning other things, I'm learning feng shui, because I didn't realize it's another healing. This one, the basis of this feng shui school is based on the ancient Eastern healing, right? And And so everything there is healing the energy in your house basically to support you so that you're happier, so your vibration is higher, so that your life is good, right? Your life is easier. And then your inner healing comes easier because you're happy and in a good place and supported. And so that's what I'm learning. So there's that. There's the food we eat, right? Being conscious of eating wholesome foods, right? Whole foods. And I saw this posted on the Biofield Tuning page a few days ago, and it was it was a list of different fabrics and the vibrations that they had,
Mhm.
and it was like linen was the very highest. It was like 4,000 or it was something like that, in the low thousands area, something like that. Whereas um, polypro
Polyester.
polyester, polypropylene was like 50, right? And so that's just surprised me. I thought, well, no wonder I love linen, right? No wonder I like wearing
Mhm.
that, or wearing pure cotton or
Mhm.
organic cotton or things. Yeah, it's just going to
Right.
have a
Mhm.
higher vibration. So
Yeah.
awesome. So before we close here, Julia, is there a final thought you want to leave with people, or something that you'd like to explore in the conversation?
No, I think we covered quite a bit, but yeah, it's the number one component, like I said before, is intention. Like Ralph Waldo Emerson famously wrote, once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. And
Yeah.
we're very powerful creator beings. We are the cause, we're not the effect. And sometimes that's a scary notion to consider, but when you think it through, it's just amazing how much we really do have ability to manifest the life that we want. And yeah, it's just amazing time to be here now, and I think humanity's at the cusp of a paradigm shift. And yeah, just thrilled to be here and happy
Yeah.
that everybody that watches this has had that opportunity. So yeah, just thank you everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia. That was an awesome way to end. And thank you everyone for watching so much. And remember again, Julia, how about you say it verbally? It's also below in the links, how to get hold of you.
Yeah, Simplicity Revealed YouTube channel, and that's who I'm on Facebook too. And if you want to see my bios on Biofield Tuning, just look under Portugal under practitioners. And then the Causism Institute website, which is Mace Energy Method, same thing. If you look under Portugal, you can find my bio and some testimonials. And I do work with any budget, so I don't turn anyone away. If somebody really wants to get help and they can't afford it, I'm still willing to help them. So, yeah, just happy to be here to help whoever needs it.
Um, that's awesome. And I don't know, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I know you were born and raised in the United States. What brought you to Portugal?
Yeah, my parents were actually immigrants from Czechoslovakia, so I'm a
Oh,
Czech.
okay. Okay.
I grew up
Mhm.
in Texas, but what brought me here, and I lived in Prague for a while back in the early 2000s. Yeah, but a friend from high school had been in Spain for 30 years, and she invited me to come live on some property that they had. And I was like, why not? I've just always been one of those kind of people that's like, why not? So I was living in Austin, Texas at the time, and it was kind of getting expensive and crowded, and it's still going that way. So I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, change the pace. And my nephew, who is a stroke recovered Victor, he lives with me too. He's 46 years old. He's not,
Mm.
and he does most things for himself, but he can't really speak, and can't get around too easy without help. So he's living with me now too, and yeah, we just wanted a change of pace, and so we've been here since 2018.
All
We were
right.
we were in Spain, and then we came over to
Mhm.
Portugal in 2021. And yeah, we're kind of nomads. We just see where life takes us. So
Mhm. Oh, very good. Very nice. Thanks for sharing that. And, thank you, everyone, so much for your questions and for watching. And please reach out there to Julia. And here, one in the chat, Sarah, she's from Poland. She says, hello, great to meet a fellow tuner from Europe. And
Mm.
and gratitude then for the podcast today. So again, thank you very much. And thank you, Julia. And we all will
Thank
talk
you,
to you
everyone.
later.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.